This is actually a presentation that Craig McClanahan did at Java UK. I think it was the week before last. We had a developer event in the UK, and we had just over 1,000 people there. Those of you who know Craig McClanahan will know that he's a kind of cool guy to have in your events, because he wrote structs, and he invented structs. So this is his presentation. I'm going to just sort of fly through it, just to give you an overview, and then I'm going to show you some examples and some demos about what all this new WebTier framework is all about, and how Creator can help. Do some Ajax demos and things like that. So then we can take questions and things. So I won't spend too long on this. So structs basically came from the open source community. It came from Craig McClanahan sitting at home thinking, hey, I'd love the system to do this, to do the web framework things, the whole components, the whole, architecture of being able to work with the WebTier. And so he wrote basically structs, and he gave it to the Apache project. And he's obviously got a firm background with Apache and with open source tools and so on. So there were two versions originally from the JSP specifications. One of them was that the framework would have everything in one JSP. You would have your presentation layer, and you also have your business layer, all wrapped into one JSP. They chose the second option, which is a lot better, because to separate, writing the presentation stuff from the markup, from your back-end type code, it's a lot better to do that way. And so that's the model they chose. So as I said, Craig gave that to Apache in June 2000, and then a year later he had 1.0 structs. So it's based on the model view controller, which everybody should be aware of. And I think I have some definitions here. So the model is all about persistent data and the business logic tier. So theoretically it could be two tiers, but for the sake of simplification, it's really model is one tier. The view is obviously user interaction, and the controller is a request processing lifecycle. So really that means what pages you want to navigate to from the decisions and the input and so on. So when Craig submitted the structs project to Apache, what happened was, in the Java community process, they wanted to standardize everything, because once you've got standards, everybody can use it, it's portable, you can work on it and extend it and so on. And so JSR 127 was created in the Java community process. And what they wanted to do really was take all the good ideas from the existing WebTier frameworks and create a new framework, or building block set of frameworks with standards. And so what they did, they wanted to focus mainly on components. And that was something that structs didn't provide, but they wanted to take the best parts of structs and bring it all together from all the other frameworks to make a standard. And so there's the goals there. I mean, they wanted it, accessible to corporate developers, because corporate developers create WebTier applications. Accessible to tools, because obviously you want your life to be made easier by using tools to create WebTier. You don't want to hand code everything. Client device neutral is just the ethos of Java, and basically if you're doing presentation tier things, you want to make sure that you can use it on a mobile phone, you want to make sure you can use it in a web browser, you want to make sure you can use it all over the place. So this next few slides are just going to talk about Java server faces and how it relates to structs. So in the AWT and Swing world, components have become so useful because they can encapsulate exactly what you want them to do and what the state they're in. And you can manage them as well using the APIs and so on. And that's become so useful that, and it's become a proven model that in the web tier world, with Java server faces, they wanted to do the same thing. They wanted to encapsulate web tier components into something where you can control it, store the state, manage it, and so on. And structs doesn't do that yet. And so, this is this kind of thing that we wanted to achieve. That's just one of the concepts. So rendering markup, not limited to HTML though. You want to be extensible again. And I have some more on the server side events and so on. But it's all about the encapsulation of the components. So the components are organised in a tree structure as well. So, it's kind of the same way you have in Java, or classes can be hierarchically managed. So, things can inherit properties, inherit values, or control over it. And this is something else that JSF does pretty well. So here's some examples here. So here you have a facet named header. You see now that JSP tag there can have a whole bunch of generation of markup, and it can wrap these fields. So it can have the bold flag, or maybe got some JavaScript, a tooltip, or whatever. Or they can just let the children deal with it. So you can have a whole bunch of JSP and JSF tags here, to just do their own thing. So the event processing model, this is something else that's kind of been quite useful in JSF. Structs doesn't have either. Just out of interest, how many of you use structs right now? Or, wow, so 50% all sitting on this side for some reason. Side. Anybody use anything else? So structs are one of those. Okay. So basically, what these slides are really going to just give you the idea of how structs came about being, Craig's project. It's got widespread adoption, as we see just in this room with a poll. 50% are using structs, and really JSF has become the standard. And, working with the community is obviously JSF's primary goal. And what we're going to see now is that JSF is going to be used in structs. Structs project, not structs, what's called structs action. It's going to be used in structs project. So, all of these slides here are just going to demonstrate some weaknesses of structs and how the community and how Apache are making things better with some. So here's the flexible rendering strategy I talked about. Because JSF has a render kit, you can then sort of make whatever you've created applicable to phones, to whatever device or screen you want to project onto. Again, representation strategy, view implementations and so on. Binding to model data. So the Java standard tag library come up with a standard idea to be able to map components with variables in the backing things and so on. Okay, there's structs EL extension library to do that in structs. But with the JSF components, you can use it to bind it to not only the value object, but you can bind it, so here it has the rendered property as well, so you can bind it to sort of anything you like, and that will map back to a bean or another variable. Creations of beans, so it talks about the action form beans, but Java Server Faces is more flexible in that sense because you can create beans in any scope at any time. So it talks about the managed beans. You can map into the faces content that's in there. There's some more a bit later on the life cycle beans and the backing beans. Page navigation is something interesting. So JSF, I'll show you a demonstration in a minute. JSF, when you do a return statement, it contains the name of a string. Null means to refresh the page, but if you want to go to a different page, you use that page name in there. And that's quite different from struts that when you return null, it means it's completed. So the backing beans was kind of interesting. So JSF has backing beans for not only each page view, but each sort of persistence area. So it has application scope, request scope, and page scope, and so on. So that's just what I talked about there. So this just gives an example here of what you need to do for a login form. You have, the JSP tags, the names of the fields, the bindings, and so on. Then you have a managed bean, which is in the request scope. This is the navigation rule, so the action here is login authenticate. Once it's authenticated and has this outcome, which is success, which is defined as a string, it then moves on to main menu.jsp. And here's the code that used to do that. So you have your bean properties, you have get username and set username, you have get password and set password, the authenticate method. So when authenticate is called, you can see here that when it returns success, then that will trigger the navigation wall and move on to the main menu.jsp. If it returns anything else, for example here, null, in JSF it will be redisplay the current page. So it won't move forward. So both struts and JSF are two different types of it's two different types of patterns. The struts is more a controller pattern, and the JSF is more of a view helper pattern. They both have their benefits and disadvantages, but in this sense, the request processing lifecycle, everything has to run through an instance of the request processor, and everything has to be done there. When in JSF, it's kind of left more to the view helper classes, and then when it runs through those classes, it hits every lifecycle method, and these are there's callback methods, so you register your interest with receiving an event. When that event happens, it's a regular Java model of acting on whatever you're interested in hearing about. So the other thing is that JSF is actually quite extensible. And so this has given rise really to moving it and improving it into a Struts project. And that Struts project is called Shale. So this is just a bit more about configuration, some more benefits and so on. So this just sums it up really. It says, well, Struts can be used for one purpose, but JSF is generally the stronger, more component application-orientated framework. So I'm just going to talk a bit about Shale, which really is the next progression of Struts and Java Server Faces. So Shale, as I said, is an Apache project, but it's built on JSF. And the idea of Shale is to bring the benefits of structs with JSF. So all the benefits of JSF and all the benefits of structs together into one framework. And they've done that, so they've been able to meet all these criteria. So server-side support for Ajax, Java SE5 features that Alexei just talked about, and they've all been achieved with the Shell framework. So one of the important things here is that structs has not gone away. The structs actual framework is still in development, but Shell is also in development and is a first-class citizen of the project. So if you're interested in one and not the other, you can choose, or if you're interested in an application-based framework, you should look at Shell. So basically what's happened is, you might be familiar with some of these frameworks as well as extra frameworks which have been incorporated into Shell. The tiles framework, for example, so layouts, the validator framework for client and server-side validation. And they've all been integrated into Shell, and they're standalone now. So, for example, the tiles project has become standalone, and they're very small. It's something like 40k download. So, it's very easy to incorporate that into other frameworks and leverage what they offer. So, the application-oriented callbacks now, you can see, is you have init, pre-process, pre-render, and destroy. Again, they're really interesting to use if you're interested in those lifecycle type of events. Dialogues as well, you can maintain dialogues which have states and things like that. Clay, so if you're interested in Tapestry or Spring or all these other type of frameworks as well, all these types of, not add-ons, I shouldn't use the word add-ons, but all these features that have been integrated into the Shell project really give you all the benefits of both worlds, of structs and JSF, and all the additional functionalities. Shell Remoting is quite a cool one, and I'm going to do a demonstration of that in a second. So it's great for Ajax applications. Again, this one's another 40k standalone download, and we have components in Java Studio Creator that actually implement and use the Shell Remoting features. So it's really easy to be able to get these asynchronous web tier applications working very quickly and easily. So some of the Tiger extensions, as Alexei talked about earlier, these extensions and the annotations and things like that just make coding so much easier. Not only easier, but it makes it more reliable, less error prone, and so on. And so what they've tried to do is use all these extensions in the frameworks. And as you can see, the last line there, it is optional. So you can get benefits, but if you have to run 1.4, there's no worries. So tool support, that's one of the things that JSF has been very good at, which is how Creator came about, really, is that because they are components and they're easy to manage and look after, it provides these great tools. There's an example here of how you can compare a struct malreader application, or you can have a look at the JSF version, which is in the nightly builds of Shell. They're pretty much the same as this slide says. The JSP page is pretty much the same. The configuration file are a little simpler, and the classes are reduced in number as well. So tool support. So as I mentioned in my talk this morning, Java Studio Creator basically uses JSF. As far as I'm aware, it doesn't use the whole of the Shell framework yet, because the Shell framework's not been completed. They're still developing the Shell framework. But it does have the Shell Remoting components in there already. They've started to move forward with that. And what I'm going to do is do a demo. So let me do some Java Studio Creative demos. So this, tomorrow, for those of you who are coming to the hands-on labs, let's have a look here. This is basically what happens when you do an asynchronous request using Ajax. What happens is on your web browser you see this text box and you start typing the letters. There's no page refresh as you type those letters, but if you press S, A, every time you press a key, the JavaScript gets called. That JavaScript will call a HTTP XML request object within the browser. This type of functionality in the Ajax functionality is nothing new. It's been around for a very long time. It's only now that Internet Explorer, Firefox, Safari and so on have good enough implementations to be able to do this type of thing. So all that does is, on the JavaScript function on key up, is going to call this request object. This request object asynchronously can make calls using XML across the wire to a web application. This web application in this diagram is a servlet, but what I'm going to show you is a web service here. And that web service is going to return a document object model. And that document object model is quite well defined. And it's going to send that to the request callback. That request callback updates the page, but there's no page refresh because the browsers know that these request callbacks don't need the page to be refreshed, but it can update the page. So that's what, that's in principle how Ajax works. And this is what we're going to do. So if you take that same example, this is the code that you need to create generally if you're going to do these Ajax applications. So you start off with your JSP, and that will generate your Java server faces or your struts applications, and you would have a text field with an HTML screen. That contains some JavaScript so that when you press the keys it does all the calls. Those calls call the servlet, and obviously the servlet needs to exist. That servlet needs to know the document object model to return and what data to put in that document object model to return it back to the JavaScript that returns it into the browser. Now, with shell promoting, you don't need to create. So you don't, everything the white boxes, you don't need to write anymore because the shell promoting takes care of it all for you. All you need to write in Java Studio Creator is this. You just write what the screen looks like, and you write how to get the data that this part is going to return. So instead of writing all these boxes, you only need to write one code now. And let's do that live. Actually, let me just discuss this. So this is how shell promoting works basically. Here is your text box. This is your JavaScript within the browser. Over here is where all the magic happens with shell promoting. So here, your servlet or whatever it's sending it to creates all the right things, and what it does, it uses that JSP calls you decided to make to return the correct data, and it makes the calls in this generated area here. Once it's made the calls, it wraps it in an appropriate document object model, and it will return that back to through the JavaScript. So the magic in shell remoting is all this bit here. So it saves you writing all the document object model, it saves you writing a server to handle the JavaScript requests and so on. So I'll show you now.